Hello, this is Graham and thank you for joining me. Now, when everything got going on February the 24th, it already seems a world away, a different world. I'd been back home in London for several months, working away on a huge new film about Donetsk Airport. I had a premiere planned in London for April the 10th. Now, obviously, that I'm going to now postpone that, and the film itself needs a new ending, a new beginning, and something in between. Now, as an independent British journalist, which I've been since 2014, after a few months working with RT up until summer of 2014, and that was that. I'm not privy to Russia's plans. When the Donbass republics were recognised, I went down to the Houses of Parliament and recorded a piece about that on the 22nd, and genuinely absolutely delighted and great to see, of course, so many comments and so much reaction to that. And then when events really got going on February the 24th, not only was I, perhaps as yourself, hadn't expected that, but wasn't prepared for that in terms of logistically getting over to the action. Didn't have a Russian visa, in fact don't have a Russian visa. I had planned to do that in May, and then suddenly, of course, all flights, everything was cancelled. So initially, as yourself, I was looking on, and in fact thanks so much for all of the comments, all of the reaction and interaction to my videos. I was looking on at events and making my contribution by way of those analytical videos, which I did, and it's been great to see them really get so much resonance, and as I say, so many comments and so much interaction, and hopefully making an impact, a difference to the situation in a meaningful way. But of course, that's not really what I'm all about. All of these years that we've known each other, I love getting in about it, and so whatever the difficulties were, staying at home was never going to be an option. And so it is, I have to say, a huge thanks to all of you who support my work as an independent journalist. That's what makes this all possible. I've come to Belarus. We can see the eternal flame and the monument in honour, a stela, they call that in Russian, of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. Now, Belarus would usually be a pleasant, a pleasurable and an easy place to come to for a British person. There is a visa-free regime, so you just hop on a flight. It would be about 100 quid, come over in a couple of hours, and that's you in Belarus. The logistics of the current situation, the dynamics mean that it took an entire day of travelling, and it was extremely expensive, but there was no other option, and staying at home could just be someone is in the midst of all of this, having a good time. And so staying at home was never going to be an option. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here in Belarus, in Minsk, my first time, as I say, here, and beautiful city, friendly people, life going on. Of course, there is a situation nearby which we'll come to, but another thing which from my side, if also staying at home wasn't an option, was doing what several, in fact quite a few prominent RT figures have done, which is caving to the massive global pressure, the command to support Ukraine. I mean, what we're now seeing is this cancel culture reaching its kind of tsunami level of wanting to cancel everything connected with Russia and everyone who speaks out in support of Russia. Now, as you may know, I've covered the situation in Donbass from the start, and we're talking about a situation, we're not talking about thousands of civilians killed and maimed by Ukrainian shelling. We're talking about tens of thousands. There's no exact figure, and every figure becomes politicised, but I can say from my side I've seen hundreds, sadly, brutally, and it's devastating to say, hundreds of civilians killed and maimed by Ukrainian shelling, children, lives ruined, wrecked, just brutalisation, war crimes, which everyone is calling now. But from what I've seen, it's the war crimes that nobody even wanted to know, no one wanted to speak about. But now suddenly the world is one big bleeding heart for Ukraine, when all of these 8 years from Donbass, basically no one wanted to know. So, now 8 years of horrors in Donbass have been carried out, have been committed by all of the troops, all of those fighters, soldiers, whatever they are, flying the Ukrainian flag that we now see lit up in buildings around the world, and footballers draping themselves in, people daubing themselves in, and we're meant to rally around that as something positive, when the reality is people bearing that flag, wearing that flag, have been committing the most horrific brutal of war crimes in Donbass for 8 years. And there's no doubt the role of the far right, of the extremists and neo-Nazis in that. These are neo-Nazi battalions fueled and fired up by hate, driven by their absolute loathing of the people of Donbass, who they refer to as separatists. And this comes back to Euromaidan, the illegal overthrow of government in 2014 that Donbass rebelled against, not wanting to be ruled by those that honour Ukrainian World War II Nazi collaborator Stepan Bandera. In fact, those that just honour the Nazis, the people of Donbass not wanting to be ruled by that, rebelling against that, have then found themselves under 8 years of shelling from far right, from neo-Nazi, fired up battalions with Western propaganda, Western arms just flooding in, filled with hate, in just a terrible, horrible situation that was actually never ending, because these, can't call them men, these entities, they were never going to stop. And so when President Putin spoke out his early statements after February the 24th, the reasons for taking the action that he did, the denazification of Ukraine, which I've discussed in a previous video, I definitely felt and feel that that's a subject which deserves to be presented and represented in a fair and a reasonable way for people to understand. Now, subsequently, Russia has also stated that it had information of NATO planning aggressive action and expansion in Ukraine, and of Ukraine perhaps seeking to acquire nuclear arms. Now, these are things that I would need to know more about to comment on, but I can definitely say that the reasons given from day one of taking the action that was taken in Ukraine, the denazification, absolutely bears and deserves consideration as a valid explanation. And so it's information war, it's also terminology war, all connected to that noun, a once powerful and both overused and even underused war. Russian media are referring to it as a special operation, which is indeed Russia's description, as a special operation for the denazification, which is something, as I've earlier stated, which deserves to be considered on its own merits. A special operation for the denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine. In the West, they are absolutely all over the place, having told us for 8 years that, inverted commas, Russia has invaded Ukraine. We can see now this terminology update, this patch, or whatever you will refer to it, given now to the pro-Ukrainians as acceptable terminology to use, which invariably ends up getting pumped into the West, because basically what the West is doing at the moment is just regurgitating, just pumping out Ukrainian, pro-Ukrainian propaganda, which leaves them scrambling and scavenging around and coming up with terms really quite absurd here, as we can see that Russia has apparently re-invaded Ukraine. So that is all over the place, as is indeed their propaganda, which is a subject we'll come to. I can say that from my side, it's best not to get caught up in the semantics of the situation, which is that we could refer to what's been happening in Donbass for 8 years. In fact, President Putin has referred to it as the genocide of the people of Donbass, but it's commonly referred to as war. NATO's 1999 bombing campaign, which is something else I've covered, of Serbia, has also been referred to as a bombing campaign against the people of Serbia, a war against the people of Serbia, well, the former now Yugoslavia. From my side, what we're seeing at the moment, actually not too far from where I am just now in Minsk, and what we're obviously hoping to get closer to, it is war. But it's not war of Russia against Ukraine, it's war of Russia against those entities flying Nazi flags, Nazi symbols, Nazi salutes, honouring Nazi collaborators, incessantly, never-endingly bombing and killing the people of Donbass. So it is war, but it's not war against Ukraine, against the people of Ukraine. In fact, we're not seeing in the Western media from the Russian side massive, and this may sound like propaganda, but it is really actually factual, massive amounts of humanitarian aid going in, of humanitarian corridors to allow civilians to exit situations, to give civilians the sustenance they need, and to make sure that civilians are not caught up in it. But the situation you have in Ukraine of arms given out to basically everyone, tens of thousands of weapons handed out to all and sundry, prisons thrown open, well then as soon as someone obviously takes arms, they're not a civilian. And as soon as someone takes arms to fight not against neo-Nazis but with them, well, you tell me, what are they? And so I will refer to this situation as war for the reasons given, but let's hope that this is a short war to end what was otherwise going to be a never-ending war, because those entities acting in the way that the Nazis did, wearing their symbols, holding them up as heroes while carrying out the most horrific war crimes against the people of Donbass, and of course fueled and fired on by the West, who only see what their polemic, what their propaganda. In fact, there's been even in this no attempt at objectivity. I'm here, of course I have my views in this, but obviously as ever want to show you everything objectively and as it is, and hopefully going on from here in Minsk, Belarus. In fact, in the next video we're going to have a look at Belarus's role in all of this, which is something again which has been the subject of a massive amount of misinformation. So stay with me, there's more to come from here, all fired up to, there is a huge job of work ahead, but there is also massive motivation to do it, and I cannot thank enough all of those of you who are supporting me, who are with me, everyone who's playing their part in this, and that includes actually from my side all of those of you who are dealing with comments, of course, the mass amounts of spam, abuse, but also people genuinely wanting to hear another side, which you can literally wait all of your life to get that in the BBC, CNN, etc. We're all playing a part. Cannot thank enough all of those who are with me. Stay with me for more to come, and from now, thanks for having joined me from here, the monument of the great victory, the eternal flame, Belarus, Minsk.